listening to you, Peter, I feel like you may believe that Karen Read is actually innocent, factually innocent, not just found not guilty, which she was, but may in fact truly not have done this.
It's really hard for me to say, like, beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't think either side would ever be able to prove this. And because of that, and because the investigation was so horrible, and I just don't feel like I can trust anything the cops say or did in this case, you'd never get a conviction. This is a case I would never want to try. I prosecuted cases. I would never prosecute this case. This is just not one I would have felt ethically comfortable with putting in front of a jury. On the civil side, will they be able to get enough to prove to a jury by the greater weight of the evidence, 51%? I think it's possible, but it's just so hard to know what happened inside that house of 34 Fairview. So if I had to choose, is she factually innocent or is she factually guilty? I would choose that she's factually innocent. I'm just not overly confident of that. I don't think I would be able to say that beyond a reasonable doubt because I really don't think anybody's ever going to be able to prove what happened that night.
Okay, let's talk about the civil suit. So she was found not guilty. First, there was a hung jury. Then I guess we'll play it because there was an extraordinary moment on June 18th, 2025, when she was found not guilty. And you could hear the crowd cheering outside. She had quite a groundswell of support that had begun in the beginning of the first trial. Here's that moment in SOP 53.
003. What say is the defendant at the bar leaving the scene after accident resulting in death? Is the defendant not guilty or guilty? So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
Yes.
Jurors, hearken your verdict as the court records that you upon your oath say the defendant on 001 is not guilty, on 002 is guilty of operating in the influence of liquor, and 003 not guilty. Thank you.
All right, jurors, everybody please be seated. Jurors, we thank you for your service.
And the crowd support for her, Peter, would be relevant because the prosecution witnesses and the family of the victim really objected and felt this colored their right to a fair trial.
Yeah, it's brutal to think about the victim's family in this. The O'Keefes and all of this, regardless of what happened and who did what inside 34 Fairview or law enforcement, they lost John O'Keefe. And that family has gone through, I don't know if you know any of the backstory of that family. They have gone through more loss than most people would in their entire lives. And to continue to feel that way and not get justice, they clearly believe Karen Read is guilty. They clearly believe the witnesses inside 34 Fairview. They've all gotten a lot closer as this litigation has continued. So I feel horribly for them. But I think that the fault lies with law enforcement. The fault lies with the prosecutors in how this case was prepared, how this case was investigated, how this case was litigated. Some of the other text messages with the cops were basically guaranteeing that Karen Read is guilty the next morning before an investigation had even taken place. And then, you have just that confirmation bias where you want to be correct and you're going to do everything you can to make sure you're correct. That's what it felt like more to me than maybe a big conspiracy to cover it up and protect the people inside the house. But I mean, we've seen cases where law enforcement gets locked in on somebody and they're going to make sure that's the right person. And they start, getting to know the victims, and it's so sad. And you want to bring justice and you think you're crossing a line for the right reason. And it just blew up in their face in this case.
That item that I asked you about before, so when she went back and she was looking for John's body, or John, and then they stumbled upon his body. This is around 6 a.m. And there was her friend, last name McCabe. Yeah. And that person Googled hose, meaning how. She used an S instead of a W in typing. How long to die in cold. And that to me seems like it should have been known very clearly what time she Googled that. Because if she Googled that before she knew, basically they were saying, well, I only did that. Her defense to Karen saying that the people inside the house had killed him. And look, here's evidence you knew he was dead. You Googled that before I even came back. But her defense was, I didn't Google that when I was alone inside the house before you came back. I Googled that with you once we realized that you'd hit him and he was in the snow and we were trying to figure out whether he was dead or alive, right? Is that basically how this McCabe defended that? But why isn't that just totally knowable what time she Googled that? The whole case should rise or fall around that Google.
Yeah, the way you explained it is exactly how kind of the arguments went on both sides. Was it at 2 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning? Because that makes all the difference in the world, because nobody knew he was dead at 2 o'clock in the morning. So how are you possibly searching that unless you're the person that put him out in the cold and you're wondering how long it would take? And yeah, it was, again, unlike any other case I've seen. Celebrate said one time, and actually everybody agreed at one point that it showed that it was at 2:27 or something in the morning. And then they got Celebrate involved. Celebrate's like, well, that's not actually correct. That's when the tab was open.
What's Celebrate?
Sorry?
What's Celebrate?
So Celebrate is like the program that they download the phone and it tells you, here's all the Google searches. Here's the time each Google search was made. And that report said 2:27 a.m. And then there's another different program called Axiom that does basically the same thing. That said 2:27 a.m. as well. But then Celebrate had, well, maybe it was at 6:04. Is 2:27 the time she opened the tab and she was searching some sports team, Hockomock Sports, and when she was in bed at night, going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that tab was left open. And then when she searched at 6 a.m., it was showing the time she originally opened the tab. So there were competing experts saying the search was at 6 o'clock, the search was at 2 o'clock. And once again, like so many other facts in this case, it felt impossible to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which once again should be held against the prosecutor and not the defendant.
That's so frustrating. As soon as I heard that piece of it, that somebody was Googling how long to die in cold, and it happened at 2 a.m. before they found the body, I was like, oh, the people inside the house definitely did it. Karen Reed did not do this. That's as good as evidence as you're ever going to get. And then I read that thing you just said about how they were like, well, it might have been the time, 2 a.m. might have been the time she opened the internet for a search that came many hours later. And as somebody who always has tons of tabs open on my phone, I can understand that happening very easily, that you just use a tab that's already open to search something many hours later. So unfortunately, that's not as clear as we would like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I've handled trials that have Celebrate reports. I'm sure you've seen other trials with Celebrate reports. I've never seen them attacked like this as just a report that they put out as a time that seems very simple is just absolutely, completely wrong. And this is something I'm going to keep an eye out now. Are more defense attorneys going to attack this? And how often does Axiom and Celebrate give completely different reports like they did in this case? Because Axiom, if you run a report right now on her phone, still says the search was at 2:27 a.m.
Wow. The other question about, we spent some time in the taillight. There was a question about whether this Lexus, it was an SUV,
Yes.
right?
It was like
okay, whether this, whether this Lexus SUV, even at whatever it was, 24 miles an hour, let's say, whether the taillight would break upon hitting a man, and that this was, they couldn't replicate this, the defense, as they tried over and over and over to recreate the scene of this alleged incident that the prosecution said happened here to take his life. That makes some sense to me too. I don't know, like that a man made of flesh and bone might not be enough force to take out the taillight on an SUV backing up into him. What was the back and forth around that?
Yeah. And, Megyn, it's impossible to really fully dig into each one of these individual aspects in just an hour or 6 hours. But if I showed you his body, so I'm a personal injury lawyer now. I handle a lot of truck accidents, car accident case, pedestrian accident case. So a person that gets hit by a car. And we all kind of know what that looks like, especially if somebody gets hit at 24 miles an hour. I have had clients die at 24 miles an hour getting hit by a car. But do you know what they look like? They have broken bones. They've got internal bleeding. They've got serious head injuries. They've got injuries below the waist. John O'Keefe had none of that. No broken bones, no bruising anywhere on his body. The back of his head, hitting the ground basically, or hitting a ledge was the cause of his death. And one of the fatal flaws of the prosecutor's case the second time around is their expert showed an example of another pedestrian getting hit by a car and they passed away. And they're saying, see, look, this can happen. The problem is the report on that person had broken bones, internal damage, exactly what you would expect for somebody that got hit by a car. And the ME, who was not hired by either side, could not determine that he died as a result of a car accident or that it was a homicide. It was undetermined. And she did not see evidence that this was a result of a car accident. No experts did, really.
Gosh, that's so tricky. We did pull some sound from a couple of the jurors after the not guilty verdict. It's always fascinating to listen to them if they'll talk. In this one you're going to hear first, it's the jury foreman, Charlie DeLoach. Take a listen to Stop 55.
It was intense because before I got to the last not guilty, the crowd erupted. It was already cheering like it was a basketball stadium outside. I didn't take one note. I didn't have to after the first witness. It was just like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. During the trial, I just was waiting and just looking for that aha moment, and there was none to make her guilty at all. It was just always like, oh, that witness sucked. I was open-minded. I was willing to listen to both sides. If she hit him or if there is corruption, and then the corruption outweighed her getting hit, her hitting him with the car. The case was leaning one way, and it kept on leaning one way, and up until the very end.
One more to play for you. This is juror number 4 speaking out.
Jason, the jury found Karen Reed not guilty on murder and manslaughter. Was it because they had reasonable doubt or because they thought she was innocent?
So I think for the jurors, there's a mix of some people think that she was definitely innocent, and the other people, there was a lot of reasonable doubt, at least to where we didn't want to convict her. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think that she was innocent. It's hard to tell exactly what people think deep down. There was a lot of things thrown at us. Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I wasn't there. There was just, there was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt. I think they could have checked some boxes or done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not. I don't know that there was any corruption going on. But do I know that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Reed? Absolutely not. There was not.
Very interesting, Peter, that he's saying that we were between actual innocence and just not guilty, but did not speak of any holdouts saying, no, I think she did it.
Yeah, and I think that really goes to the investigation and the way that this case was presented. There was holes everywhere. No matter where you want to look, if you want to compare the experts, if you want to compare the medicine, if you want to compare the car data, if you want to compare the credibility of witnesses, because that was a really big thing. If you noticed, juror number 1, the 4-person said, after the first witness, I was like, oh, wow. And he still kept an open mind, but so much of these trials is the jury looking at each individual witness and judging their credibility. Are they telling the truth? Are they being honest? Do they have something to gain or lose by this testimony? Does it make sense in the context of the rest of the testimony? And I just think that their credibility was hurt throughout the trial by the cross-examination and the other evidence presented by the defense.
Every once in a while, something comes along that reminds us of the power of storytelling. Something bold, meaningful, and grounded in faith. The Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, is a new 7-part series from the Daily Wire based on the novels by Stephen R. Lawhead. In the series, as pagan gods fall silent and empires collapse, one man's faith lights the spark of a civilization reborn. It's a story about courage, order, and moral clarity. It's the kind of story Hollywood does not make anymore. Through blood, faith, and sacrifice, Merlin becomes the bridge between myth and history and shapes the destiny of kings. The Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, premieres exclusively on Daily Wire Plus on January 22nd, 2026. Watch the new trailer now at pendragonseries.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.